Okay, and so one last video of some terminology. Like I said, there's a lot. Don't, if you're feeling overwhelmed with all of it, don't, because we're going to be using it so much on a daily basis. You just can't help but get used to it. All right, so 3 more definitions to go. The next one is what we call a quadrantal, right? And then that's an R there. A quadrantal angle. These basically these are angles whose terminal side coincides with the y-axis or the x-axis. So everything starts in standard position. So we're starting along the x-axis. But to be quadrantal, that means your terminal side coincides exactly with one of the axes. So one of our first quadrantal angles, let me spit that out, is 90 degrees, right? Because when we redraw that, we start along the positive x-axis, and then when I go through that quarter rotation, the terminal side coincides with the y-axis. So there's one quadrantal angle. Of course, what's the next one? Well, if we keep rotating, right, we're talking about 180 degrees, so our straight angle. So this would start this way, go through a half rotation, 180 degrees. We're now pointing along the x-axis in the negative side. Okay, so there would be 180 degrees, right? And that would be another example of a quadrantal angle because its terminal side coincides with one of my axes. Okay, put your thinking caps. Can you guys think of what the next one will be? Right, hopefully you guys are thinking 270 degrees. Okay, so of course our terminal side starts here. We go through a half rotation and then a quarter more, and there's 270 degrees with my terminal side lying right along the negative y-axis. Okay, so there's another famous quadrantal angle. And of course the last one is a 360 degree rotation. So in that, we start in the positive x-axis, I go through a full rotation, and I end along the positive x-axis. So these are your examples, your famous ones, of what we famously call quadrantal angles. And I think the word quad is because notice these are happening in fourths, and that's actually a pretty big thing with regard to our trig functions. Everything occurs in fourths, a full rotation, and more on that as we build. So there's your quadrantal angles. Last but not least, or a couple more ones, is complement. Basically, these are 2 angles, right, whose sum is 90 degrees. All right, so 2 angles are complements if they add up to 90. So if I had an angle of 10 degrees, its complement would be 80 degrees. Reason being is because it satisfies the definition. 10 degrees plus 80 degrees equals 90 degrees. We can even have decimals, right? If I have 27.5 degrees, right, what would be the complementary angle to that? We'll just do a subtraction, right? 90 minus 27.5. Guess I have to carry. And carry, we get 5, right? We get 2 and 62. So 62.5 degrees would be the complement to 27.5 degrees, because when I add them together, what I get is 90. So 2 angles who add up to 90 degrees, right? Those 2 angles are what we call complement. One last item. This one's pretty famous, right? 30 plus 60 equals 90. Those are some pretty famous complementary angles. And then another famous angle is 45 degrees, right? This is a unique situation where it's complement to itself, all right? Because again, it satisfies the definition that the sum is equal to 90. Supplement it's very similar to complement, but this time the 2 angles, right, whose sum is 180 degrees. All right, so we get a straight angle basically. So 10 degrees, right? What would be the supplement to 10 degrees? Well, it would be 170, right? Because 10 plus 170 would equal that, right? What's the supplement to 30 degrees? Well, it would be 150 degrees. And we kind of saw that a little bit in the last video when we were talking about rotating and obtuse angles. What's the supplement to 45, right? Well, if you put your thinking cap on, right, hopefully you're thinking 135. right? Because if I add them together, I get 180. What's the supplement to 227.5? Again, if you do the math, right, maybe perhaps you actually need to do the subtraction, right, and do some carrying. Of course, you know, we have calculators too, but let's get used to not using them. I've got 5, 2, 1, and I believe 5. So plus 152.5 degrees, right, would be the supplement to 27.5. So that should wrap up our definitions. I think there's a couple of more, but I'm going to let those kind of naturally occur as we continue our discussion and do some other items. All right, but again, a lot of terminology. Get used to it. Of course, the best way you can get used to it is by using it. So talk to each other, especially on your Canvas discussion board. Use the language of trig so that you get better at the definitions, you get a little bit more proficient, and you'll actually understand what the homework is asking you to do in some cases. Right? See you in some future videos where we actually start doing some homework problems.